Hello and welcome to Policy Beats with Osama Nizamani. Today I have a very special guest with myself, who's making a great change in the fintech sector in Pakistan. Today my guest is none other than Brandon Timinsky, who is the CEO and co-founder SadaPay. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a great time at the Margala Dialogue,
Wonderful.
and it's really good to be back. I
So
actually have the same pen. I don't know.
really,
I don't know if you saw this.
are you still carrying that
Yeah,
one?
same pen.
Has that been lying around in your jacket for
It's
all
been
that
in this
while?
jacket the whole time, and I realized when I was in the car on the way over
Wow.
that I
And how many
had the
months
same
has
pen.
it been? Probably
Must have been a year ago,
eight or yeah, it's
or
August. Yeah, it was in
yeah,
November.
that was a while ago.
Yeah.
Had a great time, met a lot of awesome people, a lot of great conversations.
Yep.
So good to be back.
Yeah, and I think it's really great to have you on this forum, especially. Back then, you were on the CEOs forum,
Yes, yes.
along with other CEOs. Presenting SadaPay and telling people about SadaPay. So we're more or less going to discuss a lot about SadaPay today, and then I would also want to sort of understand as we go into this conversation. Could you tell us like what exactly is SadaPay? I know there are plenty of people that do know about it, but then there are also plenty of others that do not know about what SadaPay really is. So if you could like sort of unpack this new thing out in the market, not so new, but still a new thing which is creating a lot of impact. So tell us about SadaPay.
Oh, there's so many ways to explain it. I think really what we're doing is trying to distill the complexities of banking into something that is so simple anybody can use it. And we've gotten started with a lightweight financial services license. So the state bank has this thing called an e-money license,
Okay.
and it lets us open up digital wallets. So SadaPay is essentially a wallet, kind of like a lightweight bank account. And because we don't have all of the costs of traditional banks, like the branches and all the people to sit in them and move paper around and have all these manual processes, we're a lot more cost efficient. So that allows us to pass these efficiencies and cost savings on to customers. So SadaPay is very easy to sign up. Takes maybe a minute. You just download the smartphone app, and you take a selfie, show your identity card to the camera, and about a minute or 2 minutes later, you have an account. And we'll send you a free debit card. I think that's very important, especially in Pakistan. It's a cash economy. So to be compatible with cash, it's important to have this utility, the debit card. It gives you access to the money when you need it. It works at any ATM in the country. And SadaPay also works online for all your international transactions. It's really popular with this younger, modern, millennial demographic, which is kind of where we're getting our start. And these are people who are using smartphones by default for everything. So they want to buy games on the Play Store and apps, and they want to pay for their Netflix subscription. So we make that very easy. We have the lowest exchange rate in the country. And there's more people signing up than we can actually deliver debit cards
And
to.
that's why you have that
Yeah,
waiting list
that's why there's
when
a
you
waiting
download
list.
the app, actually.
Yes, yes. So the waiting list was kind of like a happy accident.
Uh huh.
So
Who
when
came up with this idea?
that was my bad idea. It ended up being a good idea, but
Okay.
essentially, when we got started, I came here for the first time in September of 2018.
Okay.
Spent the first year just learning about the market, meeting as many people as I could, connecting on LinkedIn, and eventually started applying for the license from State Bank. And we had put up a website, and people got excited about this idea
Hmm.
of SadaPay. They heard just a little bit of SadaPay, but they thought, wow, this is really cool. I want to sign up. And so many people were signing up, they would send us an email and say, hey, when am I going to get this account? When do I
Okay.
get my card? We didn't know because it's a long licensing
All
process.
right.
And
And so, how long did that take?
it took it took it took 2 years to
Wow.
go through the licensing process. Very diligent, very diligent regulator wants to make sure that anybody who's getting this license isn't going to erode the trust of consumers. We're trying
Okay.
digital for the first time.
Okay.
So they'd reach out, they'd say, hey, when am I getting this card? And we didn't know what to say. So we said, hey, we're going to show the waitlist position. When
Hmm.
people sign up and download the app, we'll show your waitlist position. And for those for those people who were very excited, they could invite their friends and actually skip ahead on the line.
Uh-huh.
And that created this virality, which was so powerful, it's become a little problematic because now there's too many people signing up every day. Some of them get frustrated,
So
but
your solution is kind of creating a lot of complexity for your
it's
team
created
also.
some complexity for
Okay.
us. I think there's the law of conservation of complexity, kind of like a theory.
Okay.
And we can take complexity away from customers, probably using technology or automation. But eventually it's preserved somewhere. So either our team takes on complexity or the customer takes on complexity.
Wow.
So the waitlist has protected the team to the extent that we can scale at a pace that doesn't blow everything up.
Yeah, where you can meet your resources
Yeah,
also.
so we can grow sustainably. So if we let everybody in one day, 500,000, a million people, it would be a really challenging day. Imagine trying to deliver 500,000 debit cards in one day. It's impossible.
It is impossible.
So
It
the
certainly is
waitlist-
impossible.
The waitlist has been great. So it's allowed us to grow sustainably and make sure to always deliver a high level of service.
So what would you say to critics, who try and make that comparison that, say, if there's some other competitor,
Yes.
where they could actually go in and sign up and they would be expecting that, they wouldn't have to wait for that waiting list. So I'm sure, your team would have done that comparison.
Yes.
Like say in comparison to some other company, here's this challenge that they're not facing, but you guys are facing.
You know, on one side, people think there's a first mover advantage,
Okay.
right? But there's EasyPeso, there's Jazz Cash,
Yeah.
there's other apps that have existed, right? So those are large companies, but there's still a lot of efficiency to be created. And if we have another competitor that's gotten some traction, that's fine. I think what we've been able to do is create something that people have actually gotten excited about. There's a little bit of scarcity in the wait list.
Okay.
So because of that scarcity, people want what they can't have. So they feel special once they get into the wait list, or once they get through the wait list and they get
Okay.
their account. They feel special because they know there's a few 100,000 people still waiting for that
Right.
card. And what that's done is created super fans.
Oh,
These super fans have become so passionate about the brand that we've created that they tell all of their friends about it. So where other competitors who we're familiar with might be getting, 500, 1,000, 2,000 signups per day, we're getting like 10 times that.
wow.
And people don't realize. So I think it's had its challenges, this waiting list, but ultimately there's a lot more benefits that we've gotten from it. And it's
Interesting.
allowed us to grow sustainably,
So
which is most important.
You did speak about making transactions, but here's one question that I had: could people be also, because it's a digital wallet like any other digital wallet, would they also be able to receive payments, say, not just from Pakistan, but let's say internationally? Exactly.
Of course. So that's something that we're really focusing on. So there's probably about 15 million overseas Pakistanis.
Yeah.
Almost all of them are sending money home every month to Pakistan. And we believe by being here on the ground, being regulated, having our own infrastructure, we can have the best exchange rate in the world for rupees. So we're building something in this area to facilitate remittances better. So currently, we facilitate remittances from all the top remittance companies around the world. So you can get a SadaPay account, takes a minute. From 45 countries around the world, you can receive remittance. But soon, we're working on something that I think will be much better. So imagine the best exchange rate in the world for rupees.
Interesting.
These international companies, they're international, right?
Right. Yeah.
They don't
Yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
have their own infrastructure and feet on the ground. So we have that extra efficiency. And
Interesting.
that efficiency, every time we find it, we pass it to the customer.
And what about freelancers? They're working or providing their services on different international platforms. So would they also be able to have
Definitely.
SadaPay, incorporated into the system?
Fun fact. So most of these freelancers are using platforms like Freelancer, Upwork, and
Yeah.
Fiverr.
Yeah, yeah,
Fiverr's very popular. I personally have 8,000 completed orders on Fiverr on my own account. So did a little bit of freelancing, eventually had a lot of orders, started hiring people, and I actually hired 1 or 2 people from Pakistan.
Interesting.
And I remember that many years ago, one gentleman who was working with me, he said, "Brandon, it's really difficult to get paid here in Pakistan. Can you send the money to my cousin
Oh,
in Texas, and he will send the money to me over in
wow.
Pakistan. And so I had been familiar with the challenges of accepting payments for a long time. And now with SadaPay, I think this is one of the problems that we're most passionate about solving. So we are building a account for freelancers specifically. And this account would allow you to very easily accept payments from around the world, much more efficiently, much faster, potentially instantly, and at the best exchange rate. So this is something that maybe in the coming weeks or coming short few months, we'll be able to tell you more about.
Right. That's pretty interesting. Now that you already told me and told our audience that there are plenty of customers, eager customers that want to be on SadaPay. So tell me something that how do you plan on expanding SadaPay further? Because we have a large number of population that is not in the or is not part of the formal economy, right? Or they're not able to have an easier access to a bank account.
Yeah.
So how could SadaPay or services like SadaPay could help bridge that gap?
To be very honest, when I first came to Pakistan, I saw that as the opportunity, the big numbers. I think at that time it was like 87% unbanked. You
Yeah.
would see the
Yeah.
headlines. And when I arrived and started doing the research and looking into it, I realized, as a small company, as a startup, it's very difficult to solve those kinds of problems. Because when you're serving a low-income customer, they have a very small wallet size, they're very risk-averse to trying new things with their money, and the margins are much slimmer at the low-income demographic. It's a huge user base to go after. But as a startup, in order to serve them effectively, you need to reach economies of scale. You need to be able to be serving millions or tens of millions of customers to make money.
Yeah.
So if you're a startup and you've raised some venture funding, you're essentially burning your cash trying to climb this mountain that's so tall before you can find any semblance of profitability. So it takes a lot of money in order to effectively serve the low-income demographic and get to that scale. We made a very conscious decision to look towards the middle-income demographic,
Okay.
who are using smartphones by default. They're very comfortable with apps. They already do digital payments. They're buying Netflix subscriptions and apps and stuff. So by serving them first, we actually get to profitability much sooner. And we create a bit of a brand, we create some trust, and then from the middle income demographic, we can start to go down. So you'll notice today, SadaPay is only in English.
Okay.
And we do that just because now we're only focused on this middle income that's more urbanized, a little more educated. And then in the not too distant future, it'll be translated.
Okay.
So you'll have Urdu as well. You'll potentially have the regional languages, Punjabi, Sindhi, etc. And we wanted to make it more widely accessible. And if we continue to stay true to the name, to keep everything sada, to keep everything simple, then what we build today can be simple enough for tomorrow for anybody to be able to use it, even if they're in the low income. So I believe in this future that everybody will have a smartphone.
Indeed.
And everybody will be using digital payments. It's kind of like a future you can't really avoid. So as this low-income demographic becomes more and more comfortable using a smartphone, they become more and more available to a business like us to serve. And as a small startup, now, I think we're over 200 people, we're not so small anymore, then we can serve them more efficiently.
Interesting.
So that is the ambition. So we grow SadaPay into what we think of as a large distribution channel. And then, as you were kind of getting to, we want to expand that into different products and services that we can offer to improve the financial lives of people here in Pakistan.
So do you have a timeline in terms of your own strategy, in terms of how sooner would you want to go out to that market segment? Because I think the smartphone penetration across the country, it's increasing, horizontally across the country.
Phenomenal, yeah.
It has increased in the last few years. And despite, the economic crisis that we're trying to navigate through, and you also as part of the startup economy could bear me out on that as well. But I think the scope still remains bright, even for, say, cell phone manufacturers. So as a result, the smartphone penetration is likely to increase with time. What timeline do you or your team has in mind in terms of like, scaling the
Yeah.
operations or reaching out to, far and wide areas?
So right now, there are people using SadaPay from all over the country, even
Okay.
areas that we would have never thought we would have had access to.
Interesting.
So that's been really cool to see. And the people in the low income demographic who we would have thought we wouldn't have been accessible for are still using SadaPay. And what we found is that the app is already very simple. And even though it's in English, people kind of learn what they need to learn to manage their money. So, learning how to use the keypad and add the numbers together, if you think of EasyPass and JazzCash, they have this USSD thing. So
Yeah.
you can on a feature phone, like a non-smartphone, you can type in a string of numbers that's actually rather complicated to send money to someone. And that's happened, it kind of started in Africa with M-Pesa. And that's not very intuitive, somewhat complicated. But when people need to manage money, they kind of figure it out. So we already have some penetration of this demographic, but I think probably sometime next year, we have a few things that we want to build first. And then once we get these key products and services out, then we can start to widen the net and then we'll translate the app. We have purposefully not translated the app yet.
What's the reason behind
So
that?
it's a little more difficult to serve a customer who doesn't fully get it.
Okay.
Last month, we had about 47,000 support inquiries from our user base, and 98% of them came in over chat.
Oh,
So within our app, you can actually chat with the support team. Rather than calling and waiting on hold for 15, 20 minutes, which is somewhat unpleasant, you can just kind of text us as you would over
do other
WhatsApp.
products actually, offer this service?
It's rare in banking, very
Okay.
rare.
Like
So
even for digital wallets in Pakistan?
they don't, because
They don't,
doing
right.
this at scale is very difficult, right?
Okay.
You need a big call center or a big support team of people who will be
Yeah.
there to respond to chats. And for us, because we're just getting started and learning about the operational inefficiencies that we have and how to create automation and make things faster, the extra load from supporting tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who don't understand it as well can be a lot of stress on the team, right?
Yeah.
So that inhibits the rate at which we can scale. So we become more efficient as a business and we can deliver better service to customers as we scale. As we scale, things become cheaper. As we scale, we can invest more into process automation. And now it's still very early. We only got the license approved in April. That's
After 2 years.
4 months ago, after 2 years, yes.
Okay.
So we did have a year-long pilot phase, and we were able to operate with 10,000 customers. That's not a lot.
Yeah.
So now our user base is many-fold 10,000.
Interesting.
So yeah, lots of different problems, but I think this approach of being very deliberate with how we scale has protected us and enabled us to have a very high level of service. And ultimately, I think we are the highest rated or maybe second highest rated financial app in Pakistan. It's only been 4 months since we've been commercially live. I think we were between rank number 1, 2, and 3 on the App Store for iPhones of all finance apps.
Wow.
And on the Android store, we're between 3 and 5.
So have you like outdone some of your competitors in Pakistan?
All the banks. Yeah, so all
Wow.
the banks, we're already ahead of them.
And
I
also
think-
other digital wallets?
So EasyPass and JazzCash are just massive. And
Okay.
and we have a lot of admiration for them as well.
Right.
Operating the business that they have. So they have a tremendous amount of scale. So that they're still ahead by a huge margin.
Right.
But in terms of the banks, I think we more than exceed them in the level of service we deliver. You can see that in the ratings that we have on the App Store and Play Store publicly. And then we track it internally. So we track Net Promoter Score, which hovers around 70 out of 100. Actually, Net Promoter Score, I'm not sure if you're familiar.
No, I'm not familiar with it. Like if you could
Yeah,
unpack.
so it's basically a very popular way for companies to see how good they are doing with their service to customers. What is the user experience in terms of numbers? So you basically ask customers through a one-question survey, how likely are you to recommend this company or this product to a friend?
Okay.
From 0 to 10.
All right.
0 is not likely at all.
Yeah.
10 is definitely, I'd love to recommend that. And if someone rates 9 or 10, these people are promoters. They're very likely to say something great about your company to some other person. 7 and 8 is neutral. So even though someone rated you 7 and 8, it doesn't really mean much. That person is more likely not to say anything at all. They're not going to go out of their way to say something nice about you. And rating 6 or below is negative. They're more likely to say something bad.
Wow.
So you take a quotient of the detractors versus the promoters, and it gives you a score. And you can track your score over time to see how customers are rating your service, essentially. So it goes from negative 100 to positive 100. And to be honest, I've known about Net Promoter Scores for my entire professional career. I never knew you could have a negative Net Promoter Score. Negative
Really?
means people are more likely to say bad things about you.
Oh.
And when we did an anonymous survey of all the financial institutions in Pakistan, if you have a score that's above 0, it's positive, it's good.
My goodness.
If you have a score that's above 30,
Okay.
it's great. Really
So the
doing
standards
well.
are pretty low out here?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you have a score above 70, this is truly world class, like something you'd expect from Apple.
Okay.
So we have 70, 71, 72.
Okay.
There's only 2 other financial institutions in Pakistan that are over 0. And I'll shout them out right now. Mizan Bank and Standard Chartered, they're doing great.
Oh.
Every other financial institution is negative. The average Net Promoter Score in Pakistan is negative 20.
What about other markets internationally? So like what's
Much
the
better.
average? Oh.
Yeah, so I mean, the average would be over 0. I think financial services in developed markets hovers around 30
Wow. So
on
you're a
average.
lot up and above the established benchmark.
Yeah, definitely breaking records.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's great. So like in terms of your long-term plan, I know it's going to be pretty difficult as SadaPay will start venturing out, into say semi-urban and rural markets.
Definitely.
And especially to customers who are not usually comfortable with, tech-based solutions. So how does since SadaPay actually plans on keeping everything pretty simple.
Yeah.
So how would SadaPay plan on helping bridge that divide in terms of creating that user-friendly experience both over the app and then also with the card so that people can quite easily use the card over the ATMs.
It's funny because the biggest challenge here could potentially be trust.
Okay.
So imagine if you're a bank, you have branches, and people sit in those branches and they will accept your money when you walk in and deposit it. And as a consumer, even if you're in a rural area, there's maybe some sort of branch or even an agent for EasyPass or JazzCash who will receive your money. And when you make that deposit into an account and you hand it to someone, you're looking them in the eyes when you're giving them the money, right? And this person's going to be here later if you need that money back.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of trust that's built just by having that physical presence and being able to look someone in the eyes and give them money. And we don't have that. So when you deposit money into SadaPay, or when you use SadaPay, there's actually no physical touch point. There's no place that you can go to. The only physical touch point actually is the debit card.
Oh.
So you sign up in the app, and you request your debit card. It'll be sent to your house in 2 days, 3 days. And because that's the only physical touch point that we have, we want to make that experience special. So a normal financial institution or bank might send you a card in like a plain white envelope, and it's got a bunch of extra papers that you don't read anyway, just a bunch of filler stuff and garbage that you throw out.
Yeah.
And you get this card, and it's an uninspiring experience, to be honest. So what we did is we invested in that experience, and we procured really nice packaging that has this like sliding mechanism, and
pretty
people
fancy.
get it. Yeah,
I've seen it.
and it's like an unboxing experience. Yeah. So they get the card and like, wow, never seen
pretty
anything like
fad
this.
I've seen, people would actually record videos and then put it up.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Yes. So we made that investment because people share it.
Yeah.
And that that surprising moment, that moment of delight, builds that trust. So even someone who might not necessarily consider using some sort of digital financial institution, we're digital first, no physical branches. Someone who might not have considered moving away from a bank now thinks, wow, this is totally different. This is better than what I've seen before. So we build that trust through these delightful experiences where we go above and beyond, and that's what allows us to build trust and gain the loyalty of customers who otherwise would have never thought of using something like SadaPay.
So is there like a particular gap in terms of, that's the extent to which you can deposit money in the SadaPay account?
Limits.
Yeah,
You mean
limits,
limits?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So the license that we use, again, it's kind of like a very lightweight banking license. It's
Okay.
called an electronic money institution license, and it has lower limits, which are a good thing because it allows us to onboard customers with a lot less information.
Okay.
So if you get a full bank account, it's probably unlimited. And there's risk of terrorism financing, money laundering,
Right.
and fraud. With a lower limit account, the risk is a lot less. So when the central bank released these regulations, they started with lower limits. If you are only signing up with your identity card, the limit is about 50,000 rupees a month
Okay.
that you can deposit into your account. And if you do your biometric verification, then it's 200,000 rupees a month. And now it seems as if the regulator has realized that these are still pretty low limits.
Right.
And especially with the movement of the currency, and the consumer price index and inflation, they've decided. It seems as if they've decided to increase the limits. So
That's
there's been a draft of the new regulation that's been circulated, and I'm not sure if I can officially share, but it looks like they'll be increasing the limits.
Right. So you and other industry players are like, sort of like
So all the
trying to
licenses would,
convince and persuade these state banks
Yes.
to sort of increase
Yes.
that limit, right?
Yeah, so it's a matter of also building trust with the regulator, right? So the regulator, their primary job is probably to protect consumers, right? And if they give out these licenses like candy to small companies that are not that well funded,
Yeah.
there's a high risk of failure. And when you have an economy with a huge population of people who are cash first, if you have an institution that fails, you lose the trust of
Trust,
consumers.
exactly.
So the central bank wants to make sure that you don't have financial institutions who get these new licenses and fail quickly. You want to make sure that these institutions don't expose the country to more terrorism financing or more fraud or more money laundering. We're trying to control that, right? So yeah, I think as an industry, we're trying to build that trust with the regulator. So they see that through our operations. They see that through how we deliver service and how we've gone above and beyond what banks have ever done in our respective areas. I think there's maybe 12 applicants for the EMI license, and each of them are doing things a little bit differently. There's a lot of different business models in the space. So yeah, we do work as a forum as well from time to time. We suggest regulation changes and opportunities for innovation to the regulator, and they've been extremely receptive. I'm proud to be working with the central bank.
That's interesting. Brendan, let me ask you one more thing. You mentioned that you have a team of about 200 people.
Yeah.
Is that only based in Islamabad, or they're based in other places also?
So it's an international team. We have, I want to say maybe around 40 people in Islamabad, a little more in Lahore, and maybe a little more in Karachi.
Right.
And then the rest are international.
So let me ask you, like, what kind of talent does SadaPay plan on, having on board?
Right.
This very journey that you and your team is undertaking right now.
Talent is an interesting topic because our chief operating officer, Omar Salimullah, him and I have this very strong belief that the battle in Pakistan is not going to be for consumers. It's not going to be for customers. Any company that comes here is going to have a very good chance at getting a lot of customers. So I think Omar said this first. The battle is probably going to be for talent.
Okay.
Right? Even though there's a lot of people in Pakistan, they haven't had that experience yet working in a company like this that's growing so fast and pushing the limits of technology. and of innovation. So finding the right talent to support this kind of business has been difficult. So that's why we also have a strong international contingent. So we have, as an example, our chief technology officer, John Shepard, became a friend of mine when I was living in Indonesia. And he was a CTO at a $30 billion company called Gojek. And they were serving, I think, hundreds of millions of people across Southeast Asia. And John specifically built their financial service division.
Wow.
And John brings that level of expertise to Pakistan. So John and our head of engineering, Eli, who also came from Gojek, those international level engineering practices we've actually brought to Pakistan. So we find really, really young and ambitious engineers locally, and they work with our international team and get trained up very quickly. And it's funny because you'll have some engineers who join SadaPay, they're making, I'm not going to quote the salaries, but they're making some amount of money here.
Wonderful.
Within 6 months or 12 months, there's international companies from around the world that are offering them 2-3 times as much.
My goodness.
Because they've had that opportunity to work in a company that's pushing these kinds of engineering practices.
So SadaPay is kind of like a springboard also for these, young emerging.
Yes,
people.
Inadvertently, yes. So of course we want to bring in
Retain
amazing
people
people.
also,
We want to
yeah.
retain them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we have I don't want to say unique, but in Pakistan it's very rare to see technology companies put more than one engineer on one problem. Usually, if you have a tech company, you'll have a lot of engineers, and each engineer is supposed to do something different.
Okay.
You work on this, you work on that, you work on that, work in parallel. And you would think you go faster. We put 2 engineers on one problem. They program together. It's called pair programming.
Okay.
And other people might think, wow, that's rather inefficient. It takes you twice as many engineers to do something.
Okay.
But in reality, we can go faster. Because the hard part of engineering is not necessarily writing the code. It's coming up with the logic and architecting the technology so that it fits together. And especially as you build a bigger and bigger system, it gets more and more complex. So 2 minds is potentially more efficient than 1. And you have this learning, which is tremendous. So you can have a junior engineer who's pairing with a more senior engineer. And much faster than if the junior would work on their own. When they're working with a senior, they learn many times over faster. So we're able to train up the skills and expertise of the people who join SadaPay very quickly. So that makes us much more effective in the long run.
So that's also improving your efficiency in terms of, solving problems.
It does.
That your
it does.
team is confronting.
Yeah. So we see a big opportunity to kind of upskill the engineering talent in Pakistan. There is a lot of engineering talent, and they're mostly focused on building software and kind of like throwing it over the wall at a client because there's a lot of software export. And this way of working has a sort of short-term mindset where I build technology, I throw it over the wall, it's not my problem.
Okay.
In a product company like us, we're building something for the long term. So we want to have, a long-term vision with our practices and make sure we're investing in the right way. And that's very rare to find in Pakistan until recently. So I think as we have more companies like SadaPay who are product-led, building great things here, we're teaching engineering practices that these international companies are using, like the Facebooks, the Netflixes,
Wow.
and the Spotifys of the world. And I think that increases the capacity of the local talent pool many times over because it cross-pollinates, right? You'll start to see that local companies will be looking for these kinds of skills because they become more and more in demand over time.
So Brandon, then does your team also, or do you plan on, sharing some of these practices with other industry players in Pakistan and abroad? And let me also ask you, how do you want to, help the industry out and also universities in terms of, helping build skills that are
Right.
going to find a lot of traction with a lot of players that are doing similar stuff like SadaPay?
Yeah, so I think we've already started this. So Eli, our head of engineering, hosted a workshop, maybe more than one actually, with an organization in Karachi called Code Girls. So they're specifically trying to empower young women with the skills to develop software, which are very valuable. And what we do is we try to teach these very high level practices that you'd see from Facebook, Netflix, etc. to these young women or even fresh graduates. And many times people haven't ever really heard of these kinds of practices. And now that we're at least doing a little bit of effort in this area, people start to talk about it, right? So people who think about getting into software engineering, they start to understand, oh, SadaPay is doing these kinds of things. We publish a lot of the way we work on our blog. And now you have more and more software engineers realizing, like, oh, if I learn these things, these skills and these practices are very in demand, like learning how to pair program effectively. We do something else called test-driven development. So to try to translate that very simply, whenever we write code, we write a test before we write the code.
Okay.
And that test will validate the code every time it is built in the future into software. So all of our code across SadaPay is covered by these tests that have already been pre-programmed. So all the testing can be completely automated. Every time we push a new update to SadaPay, and I think we push to master for the technical ones, we push to master, I think, every 15 minutes. We have a suite of tools that runs all the tests automatically. So we're updating the app about every 15 minutes, whereas a bank might update their app once a quarter. So every 3 months, they might push an update to their app, and we can update it multiple times a day with our way of working.
Wow. So that means like you're still way too ahead in terms of the curve as well.
Yes, yes. So teaching these kinds of practices and the value of doing them, I think it has been a good impact on the market, and we look forward to seeing more.
And
of
I'm
that.
also glad for the fact that you're also helping bridge that digital divide that exists in Pakistan in terms of the development and learning of those skills, especially these skills that we actually need as part of our digital economy in Pakistan. So I think you're doing a great job, and your team is doing a great
Thank
job
you.
in terms of sharing those skill sets. Since SadaPay and other digital wallets, they're likely to expand their operations in future. And being a fintech service provider, I wanted to ask you, does SadaPay plan on offering any services, say with regards to, loans or any other saving schemes to people who would perhaps be parking their money, even in, say, small numbers?
Sure, sure.
Has SadaPay actually thought about, going down that route?
Definitely. I think I say a lot that I believe you can teach financial literacy through thoughtful design. And the savings rate in Pakistan, I think it's around 5%, which is very low. And through SadaPay, I think we can encourage good behaviors through the way we design our user experience. So, for example, when it comes to savings or investing, you can kind of look at them together. Savings on one side is just taking money, putting it aside. But if you're going to take money and put it aside, might as well have that money in a sort of investment account that's going to increase in value, hopefully.
Yeah.
So that could be in something simple. It could be in a mutual fund, could be in a diversified portfolio of stocks. And these things are very complicated, and the average person is not going to understand them. So we find a really interesting challenge in the ability to distill that complexity into something that's so simple that you don't really need to fully understand it. It's just simple and it's automatic. So maybe every week or every month we encourage someone to automatically transfer some money into a savings account,
Okay.
which could be invested into a mutual fund on the back end. Something, it could be more conservative. It could be more risk if the user wants to potentially choose. But the idea is to encourage this through the design of the app.
Okay.
And then you can encourage these positive behaviors where instead of keeping money in cash, which is potentially losing value, you can start putting money aside into something that's gaining value. That's, I think, very interesting. Going in the direction of credit, I think, is obvious for fintech. And with our license, we're not able to lend. So when we take deposits from customers, we're actually not allowed to take that money and give it to anybody else. We have to keep it in safe trust account in custody. But we can work with partners. So when you think of...
We do actually have the license to
Could be a
offer
bank.
those services.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean we want to kill all the banks
Yeah.
just because we're a fintech.
Right.
I think there's a very obvious potential partnership with banks. So you could see the bank as the partner who would be the infrastructure, the manufacturer of the products. Let's say some sort of
And as a
credit.
collaborator, in this
Yes.
relationship. Yeah.
And the fintech could be the distributor of the products. So if a bank has the infrastructure to provide credit, it could be a personal loan, could be a credit card, could be buy now pay later, which we've seen a lot of recently. The fintech can be that distribution channel for the bank, and it's a very obvious partnership because the fintech has lighter regulations, they have agility, they can run faster, they can service customers more efficiently, whereas the bank has the trust, the regulatory relationship, handles compliances very well, and has strong infrastructure. So when they work together, you actually have something really nice that happens. So we have a number of bank partners who we already work with. Bank of Punjab has actually been one of our best partners. Very strong, well-trusted, government-backed bank, right? And then there's others who we could work with as well for many different kinds of things. So whether it's savings, whether it's investing, getting into credit products. We spoke earlier about international payments, helping people get paid from abroad, helping people receive their remittances. There's a lot that we can do. So some people look at the SadaPay app now and they think, wow, it is really Sada.
Okay.
It's not that much going on in it
Yeah,
today.
Yeah.
But we just started. So over the coming months, over the coming year or two, there's a lot of things that are on our roadmap that we're already building now. And really excited to see how that unfolds and how Pakistan receives it.
Like in terms of, if I could ask you, if it's not like super business secrets, like what are some of the services that SadaPay plans on, unrolling in near future?
Well, some of them are top secret.
Okay.
But we are,
Some of those that are not so secret.
yeah. So in the near future, I think it's known now that SadaPay is very excited about freelancers.
Oh,
So the freelance account is coming out soon, and historically, it's been difficult for a freelancer to go to a bank and be taken seriously because they have income that isn't really considered real income. It's inconsistent.
Yeah.
It comes from some website I've never heard of as a branch manager. I'm used to seeing a payslip. If you don't have a payslip, go home. Now the regulations have changed, and banks are supposed to facilitate these kinds of customers, but still, there's been a lot of friction. So we see that opportunity to do a lot better, to help a freelancer get a business account. We could do it in probably 10 seconds. And once they have that, they can much more easily accept their payments from around the world, and we do so at the best rate. I'm particularly interested in freelancing myself because I see Pakistan as this massive market of young people who, many of them are already graduating from universities with skills that are exportable. You don't necessarily need to be a programmer or graphics designer. You could be a writer, you could be a tutor, you could be helping with data entry, you could be a gaming coach. I've seen a lot of that happening. And all different kinds of freelancers, instead of running around locally trying to find a job that pays in rupees, which is already very competitive, now you can go on the internet and you can work for someone internationally, not even just as a freelancer, but remotely. And you can earn in dollars and euros and pounds, and that's great for the country. So we've already seen this happen across the border. And there's been a
do you
tremendous
mean
amount.
India?
I do mean that. I don't know if I was allowed to say that.
Oh, you can definitely say that. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So I think across the border in India, there's been a tremendous effort in the IT export sector, and I think it's about $149 billion of IT export last year.
Wow.
Compared to Pakistan, which is around, I think, $2 billion.
Yeah.
And if you look at hiring someone in India, it's getting expensive now, right? And Pakistan looks like a deal. So for international companies to hire people from Pakistan, they see the potential salaries and they think, wow, this is great. So there's a lot of opportunity. Even if there's freelancers listening today and they think, oh, no, there's already a lot of competition.
Yeah.
As the rest of the world starts to realize that there's so much talent in Pakistan and people who are ready and excited to work, there will be more and more and more business coming to Pakistan.
Yeah.
There will be companies around the world looking to hire people from Pakistan because they'll think, we're tired of India. It's too expensive now. And IT export, which is maybe $2 billion last year, we could see it grow 10, 20 times that in the very near future. So the progress that happened in China, India, Indonesia, it took maybe 20, 15, 10 years to go through this whole process of digitization. I think now Pakistan's going to do it even faster because there's even more prevalence of smartphones. They're even cheaper than ever before. There's better access to internet. And all of those things are the tailwinds for Pakistan to really succeed. I think especially in IT. I think it's one of the biggest opportunities, and we're actually looking forward to figuring out how we can improve the education in the space. How can SadaPay help pro bono? We're not trying to charge people for courses. How can we help spread the knowledge? You might have a skill. Maybe you know a little bit of programming, but you have no idea how to get on the internet and share your skills with the world. How can we help teach that? And
that sort of answers my previous question, about the skill set.
Yeah,
So
I think essentially that's increasing the size of the pie for everybody. So as a financial institution and us also having competitors, I think it could be a joint effort to increase and help upskill the local market.
that's wonderful. And before we wrap up, I want to ask you: is SadaPay also compatible with, say, Rust ID that was rolled out by State Bank?
Yes. So I think in the next few weeks we'll go live with Rust.
Oh, wonderful.
First, Rust went live with the banks.
Oh,
And then once they went live with the banks, they're like, okay, now we can do the fintechs. So we got started on it not too long ago. Rust is very promising. Rust is really promising. So Rust is, you could think of it as plumbing to move money around. So different financial institutions can plug into Rust and move money for free. So if you're a consumer and you used to pay these fees for bank transfers, Rust gets rid of that and it makes it much easier to send money.
and what about service providers? Does it also help them?
I think it will help everybody. So you'll have,
So that's like a win-win for everyone.
it is, yeah. So everybody will be able to move money over Rust. And I think as you see this prevalence of free digital payments, you'll see more movement in the small businesses that have always been undocumented, the Kiriana stores, these micro businesses. Some people say there's 2.5 million. Some people say there's 10 million. I don't really know, but there's a lot of them. And I give this example a lot, especially recently, that the young generation of Pakistan is going to pull these small businesses into the fold. And I like to say Chacha number one, who's on this side of the street with his Kiriana store,
Okay.
he might be cash only.
Yeah.
And then Chacha number two on that side of the street, he has his Kiriana store. And this one's cash only, but this guy just started accepting digital payments. Maybe he has a QR code. And it's powered by Rust. And you'll have this young demographic who are using apps like SadaPay. And they'll have more of a preference for digital payments because they know it's just so much easier. They already have money in their account. They'll walk into this shop over here. Chacha number one says, I'm sorry, I'm cash only. And this young customer will turn around, walk across the street, and go to Chacha number two. And Chacha number one is not dumb. He knows, well, oh my God, I'm losing business to this person across the street.
I
who's
need to
accepting
catch
digital
up.
payments. Yeah. Is it worse to pay taxes or is it worse to lose business? Right?
Yeah.
So previously, money was seen as free. If I hand you a rupee, it doesn't really cost me anything to hand a rupee. But when you were sending money in Pakistan, there were fees associated with those transfers.
True.
So Rust will help people understand that sending money digitally can be free and it's more efficient, it's faster, etc. And then the young people, they will bring everybody else into the fold. All the Kiriana stores, all the chachas of the world.
All the charges of Pakistan.
All the chachas of Pakistan. They're going to be coming online.
That's interesting.
So I'm also very passionate about that. I think when we had the Margala dialogue, one of the things I mentioned was, what can we do in the realm of taxes to ease that friction there?
So wonderful, Brandon. Thank you for coming over. I think it was a thoroughly enlightening discourse and a conversation as well.
Thank you.
I think you not just only did a promotion of SadaPay and we got to know about SadaPay, but then at the same time, I think you did a pretty great job in terms of being a great advocate for digital wallets. So I'm sure the audience would have benefited, in terms of listening to your views. And so guys, if you have any comments, any feedback, please leave us in the comment section below. If you like the video, press press the thumb up button, and also hit the subscribe button if you want to follow our content and podcasts. So for now, I'll say goodbye, and thank you once again, Brandon, for coming over.
Thank you for having me. It was a great time.
Likewise.
Cheers.